The woman who belonged to the land. The wind came before the sunrise. Across the endless plains of Montana, a bitter winter storm had painted the world in shades of white and gray. Snow covered the mountains, the valleys, and the old wooden fences that stretched farther than the eye could see. The temperature had dropped so low that every breath turned into a cloud of frost. But 27-year-old Aiyana Red Hawk was already awake. Before the first light touched the horizon, she sat high in the saddle of her dark brown mare, guiding the horse across the frozen land she had fought so hard to protect. Her thick coat kept out some of the cold, but nothing could stop the sharp wind from cutting through the open fields. She rode across 10,000 acres of ranchland that had belonged to her family for generations. To everyone else in the valley, it was an impressive piece of property, a place of beauty, strength, and history. But to Aiyana, it was much more than land. It was a promise. A promise made to her grandfather before he passed away. A promise that the Red Hawk name would never disappear from these hills. Most people in the valley admired Aiyana. They respected her determination and the way she managed a ranch that many men twice her age would struggle to handle. But behind closed doors, they whispered. They said she was too independent, too stubborn, too married to the land to ever make room for someone else. Some believed Aiyana Red Hawk would spend her entire life alone. And sometimes, when the nights grew quiet and the ranch house felt larger than ever, Aiyana wondered if they were right. The Red Hawk Ranch had once been filled with voices. Her grandfather telling stories near the fireplace. Her grandmother singing while preparing dinner. The sounds of family, laughter, and life. But after her grandfather passed away, the responsibility fell on Aiyana's shoulders. She was only 23 when she inherited the ranch. Most people expected her to sell it. They told her running thousands of acres was too much for someone so young. They said she needed to find a buyer, move somewhere easier, and start a different life. Aiyana refused. This land was not just something her family owned. It was part of who she was. So she learned everything. She learned how to repair broken fences during freezing storms. She learned how to care for injured cattle. She learned how to negotiate with suppliers, manage finances, and make difficult decisions when there wasn't enough money to cover every expense. There were mornings when she worked until her hands ached and evenings when she fell asleep still wearing her boots. The ranch had tested her. And every time, she had answered by standing back up. The people of the valley eventually gave her a name. The toughest ranch owner in the county. But strength came with a price. At the local market, she sometimes heard conversations stop when she walked by. She's got everything except someone to share it with. No man wants to compete with a woman like that. She doesn't need anyone. Aiyana always pretended she didn't hear. She would smile, finish her shopping, and ride home. But words had a way of following a person. Especially when they touched something hidden deep inside. Because the truth was, Aiyana did want someone. She just didn't know if anyone could love a woman whose heart belonged so completely to the land. Her grandmother, Aiyana Red Hawk, was the only person who seemed to understand. At 71 years old, Aiyana had a quiet wisdom that came from a lifetime of watching seasons change. She knew when to speak and when to let silence teach the lesson. One evening, as they sat beside the fireplace, Aiyana watched Aiyana studying ranch records. "You spend so much time protecting this place," Aiyana said gently. Aiyana looked up. "Someone has to." "Yes," her grandmother replied. "But protecting something doesn't mean you have to hide from everything else." Aiyana smiled slightly. "Grandma, I don't have time for distractions." Aiyana shook her head. "Love is not a distraction, Aiyana. The strongest trees still need roots. Even the strongest people need someone beside them." Aiyana wanted to believe her. But she had spent years learning how to survive alone. She wasn't prepared for someone else to enter her world. Then winter reminded her that even the strongest people could face storms they couldn't handle alone. The blizzard arrived 3 days later. It came suddenly and violently, covering the ranch in heavy snow and powerful winds. For 2 days, Aiyana barely slept. She moved from barn to barn, checking animals and making sure every worker was safe. When the storm finally passed, she rode out to inspect the damage. Her heart sank. Miles of fencing had been destroyed. Hundreds of cattle had escaped into the surrounding wilderness. The repairs would cost thousands of dollars. Money she didn't have. Spring was still months away, and without the cattle, the ranch could collapse. For the first time in years, Aiyana stood in the middle of her land and felt something she hated feeling. Uncertainty. That afternoon, while she was examining the broken fences near the northern boundary, she noticed a truck approaching through the snow. A man stepped out wearing a weathered cowboy hat and a heavy jacket. Beside him climbed a young boy, maybe 9 years old, who looked around the ranch with wide, curious eyes. The man removed his gloves and approached. "My name is Ethan Walker," he said. "I heard you might need extra hands." Aiyana studied him carefully. Most people who came to her ranch wanted something. Money. A favor. A chance to take advantage of her situation. But Ethan didn't look at the damaged fences or the empty fields with greed. He looked at them with understanding. "I'm not looking for charity," he said. "I work hard. I know cattle. I know ranch life." The boy stepped forward shyly. "I'm Caleb," he said. "My dad says I'm still learning, but I'm pretty good at riding." Aiyana almost smiled. Almost. She looked back at the endless repairs waiting for her. She needed help. Even if she didn't want to admit it. "You understand this is temporary?" she asked Ethan. He nodded. "Temporary is fine." Aiyana hesitated before extending her hand. "Then you've got yourself a job." Ethan shook her hand firmly. And as the winter sun disappeared behind the mountains, Aiyana Red Hawk had no idea that the stranger standing in front of her would soon change everything she thought she knew about strength, family love, healing hearts and hidden threats. Aiyana Red Hawk had spent years believing that relying on someone else was a weakness. The ranch had taught her a simple lesson: if something needed to be done, she had to do it herself. But Ethan Walker had a different way of working. He didn't arrive at the ranch trying to prove he was better than her. He didn't question her decisions or act like he needed to rescue her. He simply picked up a shovel, repaired fences, cared for the cattle, and worked until the sun disappeared behind the mountains. And that was what surprised Aiyana the most. Ethan didn't treat her like someone who needed saving. He treated her like an equal. Within days, she realized he was exactly what he claimed to be, a hard-working cowboy who understood the land. He could read weather changes by looking at the sky. He knew when a horse was nervous before it even moved. He could find missing cattle tracks hidden beneath fresh snow. But more than his skills, it was his patience that caught Aiyana's attention. He never pushed her to talk. He never asked questions about her past unless she wanted to share. He simply stayed beside her. And slowly, without even noticing, Aiyana began letting him. Together, they repaired the damaged fences across the northern fields. They searched through deep snow for missing cattle. They spent long days riding across the frozen landscape, working side by side in the quiet rhythm of ranch life. For the first time in years, Aiyana wasn't carrying every burden alone. And that feeling both comforted and frightened her. Because she had built walls around her heart for a reason. She had watched people leave. Her parents had died when she was young. Then her grandfather, the person who had taught her everything about the ranch, was gone too. Loss had become something familiar. Something she expected. But Ethan felt different. And that scared her. The biggest surprise, however, was not Ethan. It was Caleb. The 9-year-old boy brought a kind of energy to the ranch that Aiyana had almost forgotten existed. At first, she didn't know what to do with him. Children had never been part of her carefully organized life. But Caleb had a way of making himself comfortable anywhere. He followed her around the ranch wearing an oversized jacket and a determined expression. "Can I help feed the horses? Can I learn how to fix a fence? Can I ride with you tomorrow?" Aiyana tried to appear serious. "You ask a lot of questions." Caleb smiled. "My dad says questions are how you learn." Despite herself, Aiyana laughed. It was a small sound. One she hadn't made often enough. Soon, the ranch that had been filled with silence began filling with life again. Caleb's laughter echoed through the barn. His small boots left footprints across the wooden floors. He sat with grandmother Nita during evenings by the fireplace, listening to stories about the ranch's history. Nita noticed the change before anyone else. One night, as Aiyana watched Caleb sleeping peacefully near the fireplace after a long day outside, her grandmother smiled. "You look happy," Nita said. Aiyana looked away. I'm just tired. Her grandmother raised an eyebrow. You have been tired for years. This is different. Aiyana didn't answer. Because deep down, she knew it was true. Ethan had brought something back into her life that she thought she had lost forever. Hope. As the weeks passed, something began changing between Aiyana and Ethan. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't dramatic. It grew quietly. It was in the way Ethan always saved her a cup of coffee before sunrise. It was in the way Aiyana found herself looking for him when she entered the barn. It was in the conversations they shared beneath the endless Montana sky. One evening, after repairing a fence line, they sat on the porch watching the sunset. You ever think about leaving? Ethan asked. Aiyana looked toward the ranch. Never. Not even when it gets hard. She smiled slightly. Especially then. Ethan nodded. I understand. Aiyana looked at him. You do. He stared across the land. My wife used to say some places become part of your soul. His voice softened. After I lost her, I thought I'd never feel connected to anything again. Aiyana lowered her eyes. She understood that kind of pain. I'm sorry. Ethan nodded. Me too. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Two people who had both lost something important. Two people who were afraid to risk losing again. But before either of them could say more, trouble arrived. A black luxury vehicle appeared at the edge of the ranch several days later. Aiyana immediately recognized the man who stepped out. Victor Kane. A wealthy developer known throughout the region for buying old properties and turning them into profitable businesses. He walked toward the ranch house wearing an expensive coat and a confident smile. Aiyana Red Hawk, he said. It has been a long time. Aiyana remained cautious. What do you want? Victor looked across the land. What I believe belongs to me. Her expression hardened. This ranch is not for sale. Victor smiled. You misunderstand. I'm not asking you to sell. He reached into his briefcase and removed a folder. There are historical claims regarding part of this property. According to these documents, your grandfather's ownership was never properly established in one section of the ranch. Aiyana took the papers but refused to show fear. You're mistaken. I don't think I am. Victor stepped closer. You have a large ranch, but legal battles are expensive. You could spend years fighting this. Then he offered the number. A number large enough to change anyone's life. Aiyana didn't even hesitate. No. Victor looked surprised. Think carefully. I already have. This land could make you rich. Aiyana looked across the fields where her family had worked for generations. It already makes me rich. Victor's smile disappeared. Then prepare yourself for a fight. After he left, Aiyana stood silently beside Ethan. He's serious, Ethan said. I know. You don't have to fight this alone. She looked at him. Those words should have made her uncomfortable. Instead, they made her feel something she hadn't felt in years. Safe. That night, Grandmother Nita revealed something she had kept hidden. There may be something your grandfather left behind, she said. Aiyana turned toward her. What kind of something? Documents. Old records. He always believed the truth would protect this land. Ethan looked around the old cabin. Where would he keep them? Nita smiled sadly. He trusted places more than people. For the next several days, Aiyana, Ethan, and Caleb searched through old buildings across the ranch. They opened forgotten storage rooms. They searched through dusty journals. They explored abandoned cabins that hadn't been touched in years. Then, beneath the floorboards of an old cabin near the cottonwood trees, Ethan found something hidden. A wooden chest. Covered in dust. Locked shut. Aiyana stared at it, her heart racing. Her grandfather had hidden it for a reason. And whatever was inside could decide the future of everything she had fought to protect. Ethan looked at her. Are you ready? Aiyana placed her hand on the old wooden lid. For the first time in many years, she wasn't facing the unknown alone. She nodded. Open it. Fighting for home, Finding love. The old wooden chest sat in the center of the ranch house, surrounded by silence. For years, it had been hidden beneath the floorboards of the forgotten cabin near the cottonwood trees. Covered in dust and protected by time, it carried secrets that Aiyana Red Hawk never knew existed. Her grandfather had always told her that the land remembered everything. Now she wondered if he had left behind a way for the truth to be heard. Ethan carefully broke the old lock, and the lid slowly opened. Inside were stacks of papers wrapped in worn leather, handwritten journals, and faded letters tied together with a piece of string. Aiyana picked up the first document with trembling hands. Her eyes moved across the page. Then she stopped. "It's real," she whispered. Ethan stepped closer. "What is it?" She looked up, barely able to believe it. The original land deeds. 4 generations, the Red Hawk family had protected the ranch through tradition and trust. But hidden inside the chest were official records proving their legal ownership of the entire property. There were signed agreements, historical records, letters between her grandfather and community leaders. Everything Victor Kane claimed was missing was right there. Her grandfather had protected the truth. He had simply been waiting for the right person to find it. Aiyana sat quietly, holding the documents against her chest. For years, she had carried the responsibility of the ranch alone. But now she felt something else. A connection. A reminder that she came from people who had faced struggles before her and survived. Grandmother Nita touched her shoulder. "Your grandfather knew this day might come." Aiyana looked at her. "Why didn't he tell me?" Nita smiled gently. "Because he knew you needed to believe in yourself first." The next morning, Victor Kane arrived with his legal team. He expected to see fear. He expected Aiyana to finally accept defeat. Instead, she walked outside holding the documents that could end his entire plan. "We found what you were looking for," she said. Victor's confident expression changed. "What is that?" "The truth." The legal battle began soon after. For weeks, the valley watched as Aiyana prepared to defend the land her family had protected for generations. At first, she expected to stand alone. But something unexpected happened. The people who had once whispered about her began showing up. Ranchers from neighboring properties offered support. Community members shared stories about her grandfather. People who once believed Aiyana was too stubborn admitted they had been wrong. They had mistaken her strength for loneliness. During the hearing, local ranchers testified about the Red Hawk family's history. They explained how the land had always been connected to Aiyana's family. Tribal elders shared records and memories passed down through generations. Every story added another piece to the truth. And throughout it all, Ethan stood beside her. He never tried to take control. He never spoke for her. He simply reminded her that she didn't have to stand by herself anymore. When the final decision came, the courtroom was silent. The judge reviewed the evidence carefully before delivering the ruling. The documents were valid. The agreements were legitimate. The ranch belonged to Aiyana Red Hawk. The case was dismissed. Victor Kane had lost. The land was protected. Outside the courthouse, Aiyana looked toward the sky and felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The ranch was safe. Her family's legacy would continue. But something else had changed too. She no longer felt like the last person carrying that legacy. She had a family forming around her. And that realization frightened her more than any legal battle ever could. Because love meant something could be lost. Several weeks after the victory, Ethan began preparing to leave. Aiyana noticed the change immediately. His belongings were packed. His horse was ready. "You're leaving," she said quietly. Ethan looked away. "I thought it was time." "Why?" He took a deep breath. "Because this is your ranch. Your life. You fought for this place long before I arrived." Aiyana felt a sudden emptiness. "You think you don't belong here?" Ethan looked at her. "I think you deserve the chance to choose your future without feeling obligated." Before Aiyana could answer, Caleb appeared behind them. His eyes were filled with sadness. "You're leaving." Ethan knelt beside him. "Buddy." Caleb looked at Aiyana. "I don't want to lose another family." Those words broke through the walls Aiyana had spent years building. She realized something. The ranch had never been the only thing she was protecting. She had been protecting herself from the possibility of losing people again. But love was not a weakness. It was another kind of strength. That evening, Ethan asked Aiyana to meet him beneath the old cottonwood tree. The same tree where her grandfather had once told her stories about courage, family, and protecting what mattered most. The sunset painted the sky orange and gold. Ethan stood waiting. "I came here thinking I was just passing through," he said. Aiyana smiled softly. "But you stayed." "I stayed because of the ranch." He paused. "Then I realized I was staying because of you." Aiyana looked down, trying to hide the emotion in her eyes. Ethan took her hand. "I can't promise you an easy life. Ranches are hard. Storms come. Problems never disappear completely." He smiled. "But I can promise you that you'll never face them alone again." Then he reached into his pocket. "I don't have riches to offer you." He looked toward the endless fields. "I only have my loyalty, my heart, and a promise to build a life beside you." He lowered himself onto one knee. "Aiyana Red Hawk, will you marry me?" For a moment, the entire world seemed still. The wind moved gently through the cottonwood leaves. The ranch stretched endlessly around them. The place she had spent her whole life protecting had finally given her something back. Aiyana smiled through tears. "Yes." Ethan stood and held her close. From the porch, Grandmother Nita watched with a knowing smile. She had always believed that strength and love were never enemies. They were meant to stand together. Months later, the Red Hawk Ranch looked different. Not because the land had changed, but because the people living there had. The old ranch house was filled with laughter again. Caleb rode horses beside Aiyana, proudly calling her his family. Ethan worked beside her, not as someone who had come to save her, but as someone who had chosen to walk beside her. And every morning, as the sun rose over the 10,000 acres, 3 riders crossed the fields together. Aiyana Red Hawk, Ethan Walker, and Caleb. A family created not only by blood, but by choice. The ranch that had once felt like a place of endless responsibility had finally become what it was always meant to be. A home. And beneath the wide Montana sky, the Red Hawk legacy continued, not through land alone, but through love.